This is the Louisiana Hometown Network, traveling the state to bring you the important issues and events.
I first got the COVID vaccine the day it arrived to Baton Rouge. I was fortunate enough to be able to be one of the first people to get this vaccine. It was pretty much like any vaccine I'd gotten. I would compare it maybe to the flu vaccine. It was given in my arm. My arm was a little tender that night, but other than that, I really didn't have any symptoms. My patients ask me a lot about the vaccine. They want to know if I have received it. I let them know I was one of the first people to receive it. I explained to them why I received it, why I think it is important for them to receive it. I also tell my patients to speak to their healthcare providers, speak to their physicians to see if they are a candidate. Some people may not be a candidate for this vaccine, but most people are. I do encourage those patients to get this vaccine to help protect themselves against this virus. I believe it was very important for me to get the COVID vaccine because I am a healthcare provider. I'm a physician. I see patients every day, all day long. I have constant exposure to patients, including any person that could possibly be carrying the virus. In addition, I am a type 1 diabetic, so I have a comorbidity that could also lead to potential problems if I did develop this virus. So I thought for those two reasons it was very important for me to get the vaccine. So my advice to my cancer patients are to get the vaccine. Most medical oncologists are allowing their patients to receive this vaccine even while they're getting chemotherapy. I would always encourage them to speak to their medical oncologist or the person giving them the chemotherapy first. But again, most of these cancer patients are candidates for this vaccine. They're, again, can suffer comorbidities associated with getting this virus. They're one of the patient population that is so critical in getting this vaccine. I have several patients that are hesitant to get the vaccine. They often have seen things on social media, heard things from their neighbors, heard things from their family members, and possibly are discouraged or are frightened to get this vaccine. I tell those patients to learn the data, look at the data, talk to their physicians, talk to their healthcare providers. If they are a candidate for this vaccine, they do need to get it. I will tell you that Again, most of the information that they have heard, those that are frightened, are not necessarily accurate data. So make sure if you're looking at information about this vaccine, it is truly from a good, reliable website. It's from a good, reliable healthcare source such as your physician. And I do encourage them to get that vaccine. A lot of people are frightened because they've heard that they've heard from someone that they know that had a reaction to this vaccine. A person can have a reaction to any vaccine, not just this COVID vaccine. But most of the side effects associated with this vaccine are mild. Again, I keep on comparing it to the flu vaccine. Most people will just have a little tender arms. Some people feel a little fatigued, a little tired towards the end of the day. But again, I believe most of the people that are experiencing side effects that pretty much everyone gets from most vaccines. I think it's so important for physicians and healthcare providers to be out front in getting this vaccine because, number one, we're exposed to patients every day. We're potentially exposed to this virus every day, so we're putting ourselves at risk for developing this virus. Now, that being said, if we're protected against it, this vaccine is very efficacious. If we're protected against this vaccine, it'll allow us to be able to continue to take care of our patients without becoming ill. It's also very important because physicians are a role model for our patients. Patients look to see what we are doing. If they see that their own physician received this vaccine, I believe that will encourage them to do the same. If they're talking to their physician and they realize their physician had minimal side effects associated with receiving this vaccine, they're going to be much more willing to do it themselves.
I got the COVID vaccine. Actually, Women's Hospital started vaccinating the healthcare providers and staff on a Wednesday. I was one of the first people to actually obtain the vaccine. So it was a very easy process. I signed up just like any other person would nowadays, and I came in at the time, my allotted time, and I got the vaccine. When I got the vaccine, it was basically just a little prick. I barely felt it. And I had no side effects from it. I had a little bit of soreness at the injection site for about a day or so, but that was it. When I received my second dose, I still had no side effects. It was important for me to get the vaccine because I did not want to get the virus, nor did I want to transmit it. So because the vaccine is safe and effective, I knew that that would be one more tool that I had to hopefully not have to deal with the coronavirus. And even if I got the virus, the severity of the illness would not be so bad. My patients' number one question to me, how was it? Because they know that I've been vaccinated. And I am elated to tell them that I had no problems with it. I want my patients to know that in order for us to rein in this virus, we all need to get vaccinated. We still need to socially distance. We still need to wash our hands. We still need to wear our masks, nose covered. And because we all want to get back to our normal lives. If you are hesitant about the vaccine, remember, it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing for you, for your neighbors, for your family. Please get the vaccine. You will be fine. It is safe and effective. It is important for doctors and healthcare workers to be out front because we are trusted. Our patients, our family members, our neighbors, they trust what we say. And that is a big burden for us. So we want to always try to say the right thing. We want to know what the data is so that we can have a lot of knowledge to impart upon our patients and our community. It's important for the Black community to get vaccinated because we are disproportionately affected by the virus. We are 3 times more likely to die and 4 times more likely to be hospitalized. So we really want our this vulnerable population to be vaccinated.
I received the COVID vaccine when it was available the first time back in December, the week of the December 14th, and received a second dose as well. And I had very minimal, or if no, symptoms basically. I did not feel any issues, no fevers, no major problems with the vaccine. When I received the second dose vaccine, I got a little bit of soreness in my shoulder, but that was it. No major symptoms, no fevers. I know that there's a lot of people that have some side effects from the vaccine. The majority of the patients that received the vaccine develop some fevers and generalized ache, but it doesn't last more than 24 hours. Well, I tell my patients that, first of all, the vaccine is safe. The technology for the mRNA vaccines have been around since the 1990s. And it's never been put in production for many reasons, and one of them being financial obstacles because it's a little bit more expensive. But basically, it's been around since the 1990s. It's been very safe. It's been tried before. And now with the pandemic, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the studies show that it's extremely safe and has very minimal side effects. The questions I get from the patients are regarding the vaccine are, is it going to cause some infertility or problems with miscarriages? And that's a myth. We know for a fact that the vaccine does not cause any infertility issues. There's some myths out there, and the misinformation is, significant. It's running rampant in social media. And there are some people that claim that the protein that the body develops as an antibody causes a detachment of the fertilized egg in women's uterus. But that's not true. That is a myth. And unfortunately, the misinformation out there, people try to mix fact with fiction, and it creates a lot of confusion. And I'd recommend for the patients to speak with their providers, people who have knowledge of this, and get more information from them instead of listening to social media posts or any kind of non-verifiable sources. I hear from patients say that you will get paralyzed if you get the vaccine, that you will get actual COVID from the vaccine, and it's not true. None of those claims are true. The studies, the preliminary studies, especially with the Pfizer vaccine, they did 43,000 patients, and almost none had any issues. There were some allergic reactions. Understandable. Every medication or every vaccine that we administer has a potential causing reactions, and it's not mainly related to the actual vaccine. Is probably the components of the vaccines. It's not okay to wait. So we know that the state and the federal government has been giving us guidance on how to proceed, who do we vaccinate. So when your turn comes, I recommend everyone to be vaccinated. Because if you wait, you never know when the next round of vaccines are going to come available for you. And the only way that we're going to get out of this pandemic is wearing masks, social distancing, and getting the vaccine to create herd immunity. The importance of getting the two vaccines is to create immunity in your own body, in your own immune system. So the first vaccine starts that process, right? But that doesn't mean that you're not free from getting COVID. After the second dose of the vaccine, actually 10 days after the second dose, is that we know that the body develops immunity to the virus. So we recommend that even though you get the first dose of the vaccine, not to relax the COVID safe measures, because we know that people can get the infection after the first dose of the vaccine. Not from the vaccine, but from being exposed to other people with COVID.
I got my first vaccine, I believe, on December 14th, and I was very excited to get it because I have seen so much death and destruction from COVID. I'm 66 years old, And I'm in a group that has the increasing rates of complications for COVID, and I've been taking care of patients since the pandemic has begun. I had very few side effects, if any, a sore arm, didn't even need to take a Tylenol. On my second vaccine, I took the Pfizer vaccine, which was 3 weeks later. I took the regular strength Tylenol because of a little soreness and achiness, but that resolved within about 4 to 6 hours. Well, the first thing I do is I ask all of my patients, I'm a cancer doctor, have you had your vaccine? So currently the state allows patients over the age of 70 to receive the vaccine. I know of no reason why a cancer patient should not receive a vaccine. Cancer patients have been found to be very susceptible to the effects of COVID. There's an increasing chance of dying from COVID, of being hospitalized from COVID, and I strongly, strongly urge all of my patients to take the vaccine as soon as they can get the vaccine, wherever they can get the vaccine. The majority of patients that I see have already scheduled their vaccines and have taken them, or in the process of being immunized. There are some people who have all sorts of questions about the vaccine in terms of not really understanding how the vaccine was created. They're very skeptical because it was created so quickly. They don't understand the science behind that. I think a lot of it has also become very politicized, where this virus is not a political animal, it's a virus. And we have to fight this, whether you're a red state, blue state, Republican, Democrat, or independent, it makes no difference. The virus doesn't care. And we have to separate ourselves from that and recognize that we have an opportunity to develop immunity as a community to drive the ability of the infection to go down, so we're not ravaged by the infection as we are at this time. I took the vaccine as soon as I could. My mother's taken the vaccine. My mother-in-law's taken the vaccine. My wife is constantly asking me when can she get the vaccine, because she's too young for it at this point. But I think it's very safe. I have no questions. My daughter, who's a physician, got the vaccine when she was 38 weeks pregnant, got her second vaccine, nursing her grandchild. And so I do not have any concerns over the safety of the vaccine. I know of no reason why someone would feel that from a religious standpoint to not take the vaccine. Now, there have been questions raised about how the vaccines were developed. The two vaccines that are licensed currently in the United States, Pfizer and Moderna, have both been looked at from the United States Catholic bishops, and they both are felt to be no evidence of embryonic stem cells were used in their development. If you go on the U.S. Catholic website, there's a strong statement in that regard. I don't understand why someone would not want to be vaccinated, because by not being vaccinated, you have the potential of exposing other people to this vaccine, to this disease. You may not be sick, but you may bring this home to a father, a mother, a grandparent, someone who is ill. And to be honest, we don't completely understand why some people develop very severe illnesses and why some people don't. So you really you could potentially harm other people by not being immunized. One of the things that we've done at Ochsner is we were one of the early sites for some of the monoclonal antibodies to fight the disease. We have access to drugs that can be given to people who have already developed COVID. If we can get these drugs into people early, we can dramatically decrease their chances of ever needing to be hospitalized, and if they don't need to be hospitalized, them ultimately not having complications from COVID. If someone is 70 years of age and they develop COVID, there's a 20% chance they will be in the hospital. If they're one of those 20% in the hospital, there's about a 10% chance they'll die from COVID. What we're doing here is we're giving a medication to people who are at a high risk based off of age and other qualifications to actually decrease their chances of ever being hospitalized. It's truly dramatic what we've been able to do for many of our patients.
I got my first COVID-19 vaccination administered about 6 weeks ago, and my second administered about 3 weeks ago. I had very mild symptoms from my vaccines and a very small price to pay for great protection against the COVID-19 infection. I'm certainly exposed to patients with COVID-19 on a daily basis and continue to see patients on a daily basis that could potentially be infected. So for all healthcare personnel, it's so important for all of us on the front lines to be protected against this terrible infection. I would say that the side effects that I had are very comparable to what I normally get with my yearly flu injection. They were temporary, they were mild, and again, a very small price to pay for a lot of protection. Amongst my cancer patients, I get a very large number of calls, as probably all oncologists are getting right now, as to the safety and also the efficacy of the vaccination. We are certainly advocating that all of our patients receive the vaccine when the vaccine is available to our patients, and we know that it's not only a potential excellent safeguard for our patients, but we also know that it's extremely safe. We're getting a lot of questions, and hopefully through multiple media that we are appealing to, we can get the word out that yes, we are recommending for patients who actively have cancer and those who are actively undergoing treatment for their cancer should absolutely be vaccinated when the vaccine is available for each patient. It's very important that any patient with an active cancer or who is actively receiving treatment for their cancer speak with their oncologist one-on-one to make sure that it is recommended by their own treating oncologist as to the safety of receiving the vaccination. It's very interesting in the setting of treating cancer patients that cancer patients have an amazing understanding of their susceptibility to infection. So we have actually not seen a significant increase in COVID-19 infection amongst patients who actively have cancer, probably in part due to the fact that cancer patients know the safeguards in which to take of cleanliness, hand washing, social distancing, and we're probably doing that to some degree even before we knew these terms for COVID-19 infection. As loved ones and caregivers for patients who have cancer and who are actively being treated for cancer have the opportunity to receive the vaccine, we're also advocating that all people who also care for patients with malignancies should get the vaccine when it is available. That's because we also know that we need to protect potential carriers that could bring COVID-19 to our patients by close proximity should also be protected. We're not very certain that the vaccine absolutely protects a patient from being a potential carrier for the virus, but we do believe that that risk is certainly reduced. So it is very important that all those who are caregivers for patients with cancer should be protected through the vaccination also. We fear at this point that cancer screening is actually down because of patients' fear of entering a medical facility to get normal, standard, age-appropriate cancer screening. And we believe that we're actually seeing some instances where patients are presenting at later stages of their malignancies because of the fact that they are not seeking appropriate, age-appropriate cancer screening. We urge all patients to continue their routine screenings, especially at facilities like hospitals that are taking all necessary precautions to protect people who are coming into the facilities against COVID-19. We know it can be really concerning for a patient to come into a medical facility where patients with COVID-19 are actively being treated, but that should not be a deterrence to a patient actually still concentrating on their preventive health care. What we know is that the vaccine absolutely protects a patient from getting a severe illness with COVID. What we're not certain is if the vaccine absolutely makes a patient not be able to carry the virus to another loved one. So it's important to get the vaccine for that reason, but it's still very important to continue what we're doing for protection, social distancing, masking, and extreme concentration on hand washing.
I think it's very important for as many people to get this vaccine that are candidates for it as possible to be COVID safe. We have had such changes in the world around us, from wearing masks to social distancing. A lot of people want to go back to the way that used to be, some normalcy. Now that being said, I do encourage people who have had the vaccine to continue safety precautions. They need to continue to wear their mask. They need to continue to practice social distancing. But that being said, the more people that get this vaccine, the more COVID safe the environment around them is going to be.
It is very important for people to be COVID safe because we don't want to overwhelm the healthcare system. If we, on top of the regular patients, if we see a surge of patients coming in to take care of their COVID issues, that's going to be very drastic to the manpower, to the staff, to the ability to host patients in our hospitals, because we are seeing a significant increase on not only on COVID patients, but on non-COVID patients as well.
It is important for everyone to get the vaccine to be COVID safe, because we want to rein in this virus. We have to fight this pandemic. It is getting worse. Our numbers are still high, and we have new variants. So we want to do everything. We have to do it for each other, for each other's family members, for our older population. We are doing the right thing by getting this vaccination.
To become COVID safe as a community, we have to look at this in several ways. Number one, what we do daily: wash our hands, wear a mask. I wear a mask all day long when I'm in contact with other people. I ask my patients to always mask when they're in the room with me, no exceptions, period. Number two is, in the long-term way of becoming COVID safe, is that we all become immunized. By immunizing us, we will develop herd immunity. That is, the virus will have no place to go because everyone will be immunized and the virus will die away. And so that's what we need to do to become COVID safe as a community. We are truly all in this together.
It's important for all of us to participate in initiatives such as COVID Safe, because the only way that we can control this virus is if we do this as a complete society. So vaccination, but until we have the entire community vaccinated, continue to concentrate on our efforts for social distancing, for masking, and for hand washing, which is the best things that we can do to stop the spread of this virus.
A mis amigos hispanos en la comunidad, les recomiendo que cuando su turno para la vacuna llegue, por favor, procuren vacunarse. Es la única manera que vamos a salir de esta pandemia. También les recomiendo a nuestros hermanos de la comunidad hispana que por favor mantengan el distanciamiento social, mantengan las medidas de COVID safe, como usar máscaras y mascarillas y evitar reuniones de más de 10 personas. Lo más recomendable que yo le puedo sugerir a los hispanos de la comunidad es que se mantengan con las personas que viven en su casa y no salgan a reunirse con otras personas.
Louisiana is trying to save tigers, whose population has dropped 97% in the last 20 years worldwide. The most famous tiger in Louisiana is Mike the Tiger, the mascot of LSU. Mike is the only live tiger mascot in the nation. He lives in a spacious home on the campus of LSU and receives care daily from the LSU School of Veterinary Medicine.
Mike the Tiger is a very special part of the LSU community. He represents an endangered species, the tiger. That's a very iconic animal species. In fact, it's the most illustrated animal in all of art history. Mike is a mixed breed tiger. He is a combination primarily of Siberian and Bengal tiger. He's 4 years old. He's been on this campus for 3 years. He's fed every evening. He eats a standard carnivore diet. It looks like hamburger, but it's more than that. It's a combination of meat, fish, vegetables, vitamins, soy, and minerals. We can't just feed them muscle meat. That's imbalanced in its calcium and phosphorus ratio and will cause problems. And in the wild, they eat the whole animal anyway, so they get the glandular organs as well as the muscle tissue. So it's a balanced diet that is fed by zoos to carnivores all over the country. There are 56 universities in the United States that have the tiger as their mascot. Of course, Mike is the only live tiger on a university campus and owned by a university, so that's very special. Mike lives in a 15,000 square foot habitat. It's got the yard, which you can see, the waterfall, the pool, the stream. He also has a night house where he is brought into every evening. Mike has a very affectionate and engaging personality. One of the reasons we selected this tiger instead of other tigers was because of his personality. We do have to keep in mind, though, that he is a tiger, so he's not a pet. Tigers are not domesticated animals. Many of them, of course all of them in the United States, have never been outside this country. They've never been in the wild. They've always been raised in captivity, but that doesn't make an animal a domesticated animal. So we are very careful with him, and we never forget that he is a tiger, which is an apex predator. Mike is very well cared for. We watch over him very closely. My 2 veterinary students check on him twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, and I come over and check on him a number of times a week, couple times a week, 2 to 3, depending on how he's doing. He's in very good health, and so we don't have any immediate concerns for his health, but we do watch him very closely. Now, the wild tiger population has declined tremendously in the past 20 years. It's estimated that the population has declined about 97%. The vast majority of the reason for that is simply habitat loss. Of course, poaching has been an issue, but it's primarily habitat loss. So it's the loss of prey species and an inability to find mates. The loss of tigers in the wild is almost an inevitable component of the human population expansion. Clearly, more needs to be done to preserve the remaining habitat. Areas need to be developed so that tigers can move from one habitat to another, so they can get together. And of course, the illegal trade in tiger parts needs to be eliminated. Range countries have developed plans for preserving and to some extent growing back their wild populations of tigers. They simply need to enact and abide by those plans, and if they would do those, which really focus on prevention of poaching and habitat conservation, then we would see an increase, a return of some of these tigers that have been lost.
LSU is currently conducting genetic research in the hopes of reversing the declining tiger population.
LSU's first research project on tigers is a genetics project. We're going to be working in collaboration with Leslie Lyons, who's at the University of Missouri, which is also part of the Tigers United Consortium. And Alessandra is going to be looking at 3 different things. So the first thing is to look at the genetic relatedness of zoo tigers, which are in the species survival plan, which is interested in the conservation of tigers. So those tigers are bred for conservation purposes. And the tigers are very carefully managed with a pedigree to avoid inbreeding, but like most pedigrees, there's no information on the relatedness of the tigers that started the breeding program. In other words, the founders of the pedigree, we don't know how related they are. So you can use genetic information to look at the genetic relatedness of the tigers and use that information to supplement what we know from the pedigrees, and that helps to avoid issues with inbreeding. The second aspect of her work is to see if there's a relationship between genetic variants and poor quality sperm. So this is in collaboration with Jason Herrick, who's at the Omaha Henry Dooley Zoo. He has information on sperm quality, and Ali is going to pair that up with her genetic data. Finally, the last thing we want to do is look at the genetics of privately owned tigers which are not held in zoos. So 3 different parts to this work. The first is to look at the amount of hybridization among the 3 subspecies that are commonly found in the US, so the Sumatran, the Malayan, and the Amur tigers. And then another thing is to look at the levels of inbreeding that have been caused by uncontrolled breeding. And finally, to see if there's any relationship between genetic variants and traits that are associated with inbreeding in tigers, like cleft palates, for instance. So overall, we hope to be a long-term participant in the Tigers United Consortium. We hope that this is a long-term project where we can look at the genetics of captive tigers in an ongoing way, and also hopefully participate in the genetics of wild tigers in the future. And at least for the captive tigers, if we can assess what the extent of the problem is and where the problems lie, then we can help formulate some solutions for their conservation.
My name is Alessandra Bresnan, and I'm a 3rd-year PhD student in the Conservation Genetics Lab of Dr. Sabrina Taylor at Louisiana State University. I've always had a passion for big cats, but tigers have always fascinated me since I was a small child because of their power, their beauty, their strength. And then when I studied my undergraduate, I learned that actually they're very important as well for conservation because they're an umbrella species, which means if they're protected in their environment and their habitat, all other species are protected. So not only are they beautiful, but they're also very important for conservation as a whole. My research is focused on examining the genetics of captive tigers here in the United States. I'm going to be using a method called whole genome sequencing, which actually is at the top of the line for genetic techniques, because it allows you to get the entire genetic code of an individual animal. And so I'm going to use whole genome sequencing in order to look at a number of different aspects of captive tigers, because it's so important to have a viable captive tiger population so that one day we could potentially reintroduce them into the wild, which is the goal of many zoos. So my research project has many different aspects. The first being looking at the relatedness of tigers in species survival plans. Species survival plans are captive breeding programs that are set up by AZA accredited zoos in which they manage the genetic diversity of these tigers by knowing their relatedness using pedigrees and stud books. But by integrating genetic analyses, which is what I can do with the whole genome sequencing, we can get more fine-scale information about their relatedness and see exactly how related they are, because many times you assume that the tigers that you take out from the wild are unrelated. And this might not always be the case, so by using genetic analyses, we can really understand if that was indeed the case or not. Also, tigers have had decreased sperm production in the last 10 years or so, and this is research being carried out by Dr. Jason Herrick at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha. And we have agreed to collaborate with him in order to try to understand if there's any genetic causes that are underlying this reduced sperm production. We are also going to focus on tigers that are not in AZA facilities, so not found in species survival plans. These tigers are called generic tigers. We don't know how many there are in the United States, but it's an estimated 5,000 to 10,000. There's so many of these, and they're kept by private breeders in circuses, and roadside zoos. And so these tigers often have problems with inbreeding. So for example, white tigers often have issues with cleft palate, cross-eyed, or they have clubbed feet. And this is because in order to get the white coat, 2 different related individuals are mated with one another to create the white coat, and it leads to inbreeding. The goal of our research is to try to make sure that the tigers that are found in the AZA zoos are as genetically diverse as possible. AZA zoos already do this with stud books and pedigrees, but by bringing in a genetic factor into this, we can really get at the fine-scale questions of whether the ones that they took out from the wild in the beginning were related to one another. And by maximizing the genetic diversity of these captive populations, hopefully we'll have a strong captive population for eventual reintroductions in the future.
There are two categories of tigers in the world. There are the ones that are found in the wild tigers, and the ones that are held in captivity. So the range countries for the tigers are in Asia. You know, there's a number of different subspecies, the Amur, Sumatran, Malayan, South China, for instance. And then there's a few subspecies that have already gone extinct, like the Caspian, the Java, and the Bali subspecies. And usually the research that's done on tigers in the wild is done in those range countries because there are quite a few permits involved with exporting and importing samples, which is quite a barrier. The other way you can look at tigers is to see what's been happening in captivity. So in the US, there are a lot of tigers in captivity. And again, two categories. There are the tigers that are in the species survival plan, which are carefully managed to maximize genetic diversity, reduce issues with inbreeding. And then there are tigers which are not held by species survival plan zoos, and those tigers are not managed really at all, right? So there's no control over whether different subspecies are bred together, which means that you lose that genetic lineage of a subspecies. And there's also no management in terms of how inbred those tigers are. So some of those tigers are quite highly inbred, and you can see the results of that with defects like club feet and cleft palates.
Also involved are a group of LSU students, Tigers for Tigers.
The name of our organization is Tigers for Tigers. We are a student organization at LSU who fundraises for research that is done right here at LSU, and we also promote the education of the public of tiger conservation. Our group is involved with tigers because we think it is an important species to conserve and save, so our family and our generations that come in the future are also able to see the tiger as a living species in the United States and other countries. It's important to continue this research in the future, and the support of the public is very critical.
So I joined Tigers for Tigers because I thought it was a really important cause that people don't know about. I think it's really important to advocate for things even if other people don't know about it, and tiger preservation really isn't something that people think, you know, hey, we here in Louisiana need to worry about, but as a society, and it's a really big, it's a big picture.
I joined Tigers for Tigers because I've honestly just loved tigers since I was really little. I used to come here all the time with my mom to come visit Mike. They've always been my favorite animal. And when I heard about the group, I had to join. I love tigers so much, and just learning more about the preservation of them and how important it is was really important to me.
I would like the public to know that it is super important to preserve this species because, like other big cats, tigers are one of our most endangered species. They face things from habitat destruction to poaching, and there's actually more tigers in captivity than there are in the wild. So we, as a species that has done so much to harm this earth, we've done a lot of really bad things. We need to make that change towards renewable resources and making daily choices that conserve and protect these species.
I think it's kind of sad that species have gone extinct just because people, there's wild hunting and things like that. But the research that LSU is doing is really important just because, it provides an insight into the future, what we can do better as a society, how to just take care of species. And even though it's only tigers that they're looking at right now, this could translate over into other species as well.
So there's a lot of issues about tiger poaching all over the world, and it's really sad and disappointing just because tigers are such beautiful animals. They get so big and not enough people know about them, and it's sad that most of our children probably won't ever see a tiger if things don't change.
I joined Tigers for Tigers because as a natural resource ecology and management major, this is truly what I want to base my career in. I want to advocate for endangered species and teach people to care for them and continue to support organizations and make daily choices that are going to impact endangered species like Mike.
The amount of research they do is so helpful, and this tiger, Mike, lives like a king over here. They have veterinarians around the clock looking after him, and they come and they clean up after him every single day. The amount of research they do and work they do for it is helping more than anything.
So I think that tiger conservation is also not only important to us in the United States, but also to people in various countries, because tigers are apex predators. And apex predators, they do a lot of things like support ecosystems and keep populations down where they need to be down and keep populations up where they need to be up. And they're just very crucial to everywhere, not just in the United States.
Mike the Tiger gives hope, stands for hope, strength of LSU, and tigers themselves can stand for other things for people around the world too.
Down the road, our organization will be doing more fundraising events to support our efforts for this research. So if you would like to make a contribution, please email lsutigersfortigers@gmail.com and I will give you more information on how you can donate.
LSU is not alone in this effort. 3 other universities, all with tiger mascots, have formed the Tigers United University Consortium: Auburn, Clemson, and Missouri.
There is no animal on planet Earth like a tiger. All at once so intimidating, but so beautiful. That's why so many athletes at schools like LSU, Auburn, Missouri, and Clemson step into every arena with the pride that comes with calling themselves a tiger. But with every passing year, there are fewer tigers in the wild. Their global population has dipped to below 3,900. That's why those 4 schools have joined forces to create the Tigers United University Consortium, pooling their resources to help in the global effort to save their namesake animal, with a focus on conservation, education, and repopulation. They've decided that simply holding that tiger is not enough. If you're going to wear the stripes, then it's time to help save your own.
Our first big success, if you will, is that each university agreed to sponsor PhD students from India to come and work with our faculty to get their doctorates and then go back and do the research on tiger conservation back at home.
To see one in the wild is something that is awe-inspiring. You're just not the same after you've seen one. The thing about the tiger is it's a healthier force when the tiger is present, and it doesn't change the balance of nature. It's kind of the epitome of biodiversity, and if we lose it, what it's going to lose behind it.
Because there cannot be a balanced forest without a tiger. If the forest is not well balanced, the tigers won't be there.
I've seen so many tigers, hundreds of them in the wild, but every time I see one, it just gives me those same goosebumps, and the feeling is still the same. It is a teacher. If you observe tigers and if you're really passionate about knowing how it leads its life and how it moves, despite all the problems that we have, tiger is still surviving.
I love to hear the forest coming alive. Every animal is calling. It is not just that the animals are scared of it. I think they have so much respect and awe. There is research on ecotourism, there is research on grassland management, there is research on exotic species, and I think countries are excited by what is happening here.
The students and the academicians and the entire Clemson universe connects to tigers in such a big way. When I saw my first match back in 2017, the Go Tigers roaring around the entire stadium, and the sea of orange that was to be seen is huge. More than the mascot, I think this is a very important partnership, and we really would like to take it to other tiger range countries also beyond India. It can be a model to take this partnership forward.
What Clemson is conveying is the importance of saving the apex predator. Because if you save the tiger, you save other species, including our own. It's about national parks being engines of economic growth. If you take out a tiger from a forest, people stop coming to that forest. The entire ecotourism collapses.
In all the land-grant universities, there are so many students from Asia which belong to these tiger range countries. These young students can be champions in their country, especially to reduce the demand for illegal wildlife trafficking and consumption of body parts within their countries. And I think the next generation can be the real leaders, and we really need new age tiger champions who can lead us into the phase where we actually eliminate the demand for tiger and wildlife body parts.
And the interesting thing that I found about working around tigers is the same problems that face tigers face the rhinoceros, face the elephant, the mountain gorilla, all in Africa. So the problems and the solutions to those problems, if we can save the tiger, can be used to save other animals as well.
And I think it will be a celebration of human morality.
The tiger is an apex predator. In any ecosystem, there's more dominant species. It's one of those. If we can protect the tiger and its habitat, we can protect all kinds of other species of flora and fauna below it. And it's just a critical mega fauna that's very charismatic, and it gets a lot of people's attention, but we are precariously close of losing this animal, and we could lose it in a generation if we don't take steps to protect it. The loss of tigers over the last part of this century has certainly been something that can be attributed to three major things. One is the loss of habitat. The world's population's growing. We've got more and more people that are consuming land, and tigers need lots of remote wilderness to live in. The second reason is poaching and illegal wildlife trade. It's a multi-billion-dollar syndicated business where tigers are being poached out of the wild for all kinds of uses, some of which is related to traditional Chinese medicines and certain exotic cures, which we don't believe is actually factual. So there's a lot of that going on where we are losing tigers through illegal trade, as well as other animals. And then the final thing is human-wildlife conflict. And twice in my experience, as I've traveled to tiger range countries in Asia, there have been situations where tigers and humans came in conflict, whether it be with killing livestock or actually killing humans. And sometimes that's very, very unfortunate, but it does happen. And then there's retaliatory killings of tigers and other things as the people take it out on the animal, because we are encroaching on their territory, not necessarily the other way around. Success we've seen with our consortium is the primary success has been most recently our PhD program. We now have 8 Indian Forest Service or natural resource conservation professionals that are matriculating under our PhD programs at our 4 universities. So we've gotten those students enrolled. Some of them have been with us for almost 2 years now, and they are starting to go out and do their research in the field back in India related to tiger conservation. So their work will have an immediate impact on the tiger conservation and the Global Tiger Recovery Program as we move this thing forward. That's our first big success and the first thing that we've really gotten to accomplish together. When I got to Clemson 20 years ago, I was amazed at the passion of people for tigers here at our university. And it's the same of the 100,000 people that packed Death Valley and Baton Rouge, the same that packed the stadium in Auburn and Missouri, yelling for their tigers. And they don't translate that passion yet into efforts to save the tiger, but that's our mission, to try to capture and harness the power and the passion of our fan bases and our alumni, and to bring our scientists to bear upon some of the problems so we can help solve some of the challenges facing tigers in the wild, as well as the ones to protect the ones here for a more humane life here in the United States.
Mike is also a symbol. He's more than that, but he is a symbol to the LSU community of everything everything good that they remember about their time at LSU, and that's a very powerful symbol. It is important that the LSU community support our tiger conservation efforts. We've started out small with one student. We're hoping to continue this and expand it and really bear down on this captive tiger population so that we can preserve them. You know, if the tigers in the wild are lost, all we will have will be the captive tiger population. So we take that very seriously, and we're moving ahead with the research on that population.
I think that members of the public already care about tiger conservation. You know, you can tell by the number of universities that have tigers as mascots. It's not just the 4 universities in the Tigers United Consortium. You can tell by how interested people are in these animals in zoos, how interested people were in the Tiger King feature that came out last year. And it would be great to be able to foster that interest in these tigers to help protect them so that they persist over the long term, for instance, through fundraising, research, and education.
It's important for the public to support this program because there's already so much enthusiasm around tigers. That's why so many universities have tiger mascots, and that's why tigers are such an important icon for so many different sports teams as well. So if you can take that enthusiasm and garner it in order to conserve these tigers as a whole, I think that's really important so that future generations can also come to love tigers and know that they're not something of the past.
People can go to the Tigers United University Consortium, which is hosted by Clemson University, and that gives a broad overview of what's going on at all 4 universities. If they're more interested in the research that is happening at LSU, they can search under LSU's School of Renewable Natural Resources, my name, Sabrina Taylor, and they'll be able to track that down.
Mike the Tiger has a website that is sponsored by the Tiger Athletic Foundation. There's some history about each of the tigers, a little bit of history about tiger conservation. In addition, and in a very living way, Mike has a Facebook page. And Ginger Guttner manages that page. She's updating it daily with news about Mike. And so he has many, many followers, over 100,000 followers. And so Mike's followers can find out what's new with Mike the Tiger by following his Facebook page, and he also has a Twitter account.
Do your part to stop the spread of coronavirus.
Remember the 3 S's to staying safe.
Sanitize. Sanitize your hands frequently. Wash your hands with soap and water for 30 seconds or use hand sanitizer.
Secure your mask. Secure your mask properly, making sure your nose and mouth are covered.
Social distance. Practice social distancing. Stay 6 feet away from people and avoid crowded areas.
Help slow the spread of coronavirus.
Remember, sanitize, secure your mask, and social distance.
This has been the Louisiana Hometown Network. If you would like more information, please contact us.